My brother-in-law moved in for a week after losing his job. 3 months later, he was charging rent to my kids for their rooms. When I told my husband, he said, he needs the money more than they do. I packed my bags that night. But before I left, I did one thing that made him finally understand who he had. I never thought my marriage would end over something like this. I thought if it ever did, it'd be over something big, an affair, a huge lie, something dramatic. But it wasn't. It was a slow burn, and it started with one stupid sentence, just for a week or two, max. That's what my husband, Darren, said when he asked if his brother Craig could stay with us. Craig had just lost his job at a warehouse down in Indianapolis. Laid off, apparently. No place to go, no money saved, no backup plan. I didn't even hesitate when I said yes. Family helps family, right? That was my mistake. My only condition was that it be temporary. Darren agreed. A week, maybe 2. Just until he gets back on his feet. Week 1? Craig kept to himself. Didn't talk much. Slept late. Fine. I didn't expect him to bounce back immediately. Losing a job is tough. Week 2. He started making himself more comfortable. He'd leave his dirty socks in the living room, hog the remote, eat leftovers that were meant for the kids' lunches. I mentioned it to Darren and he said, give him a break. He's going through a lot. Week 3? Craig was still here. Still hadn't looked for a job. I knew that for a fact because I work from home. I saw him sitting on the couch, watching daytime TV, scrolling on his phone. He didn't even pretend to be busy. I asked Darren again, has he applied for anything? Darren shrugged. He will. That same week, I noticed something strange. Rachel, my 15-year-old daughter, seemed stressed. She was moody, quiet, snappy, more than usual for a teenager. One night, I heard her crying in her room. When I asked what was going on, she hesitated. I kept pushing, and finally, she told me. Uncle Craig asked me for money. What? He said if I want to keep my room, I should help pay for it. Like $10 a week. I stared at her. What do you mean, keep your room? He said it's like rent. That I'm old enough to start paying my way. I thought he was joking but, he wasn't. He keeps asking. I was so angry I felt my hands shaking. Before I could even talk to Craig, Jake, my 17-year-old, came to me the next morning. Did Rachel tell you? He asked. Tell me what? Craig wants money from me too. Says if I don't pay, he'll let his friend crash in my room. Says I'm lucky he's giving me a deal. Mom, he's serious. That was it. I didn't care if he was family. I didn't care if he had nowhere to go. I found him in the kitchen, eating cereal out of the box, standing there like he owned the place. You're asking my kids for money? He didn't even look surprised. Yeah. I need cash. They're old enough to start pulling their weight. Are you out of your mind? They're kids. They're teens. They can afford $10. I told Darren everything that night. I thought he'd finally see what a disaster his brother was. I thought he'd stand up for our kids. But he didn't. He sat on the edge of the bed, looked me straight in the face, and said, he needs the money more than they do. I felt something inside me snap. Not break. Snap. Like something I'd been holding on to finally let go. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I just stood up, walked into the closet, and started packing my bag. Darren followed me. Are you seriously doing this? I didn't answer. I was too angry. Too tired. But I wasn't just going to leave. Not yet. First, I was going to make sure Darren and Craig understood exactly who they were messing with. I didn't leave that night. Not right away. I stayed calm. Quiet. That scared Darren more than if I had screamed. I finished packing just enough to make it believable. Clothes, toiletries, a few personal things. I wanted him to think I was walking out without a plan. That's what he deserved to think. But I had a plan. The next morning, I got up early. Earlier than anyone else. I made coffee, sat at the kitchen table, and stared at the living room Craig had turned into his own personal trash pile. Empty chip bags, soda cans, his old sneakers sitting right on the coffee table. It was disgusting. I waited for him to wake up. When he finally came stumbling in around 10 a.m., scratching his belly and yawning like he didn't have a care in the world, I asked him casually, "Hey, Craig, did you ever sign that paperwork Darren gave you when you moved in?" He blinked. "What paperwork?" I smiled a little. "You know. The tenant agreement." "There was no agreement," he muttered, grabbing a mug. "I'm not a tenant." "Exactly." I took my coffee to my home office, shut the door, and called my cousin Tracy. She's a lawyer. She works in real estate and housing law. I told her everything. She asked me to send pictures of the mess, the texts from Rachel, and an audio recording if I could get one. I spent the next few days collecting everything. Craig was loud, sloppy, and stupid. He had no filter. I caught him bragging on the phone to one of his buddies, laughing about how easy it was to tax the kids. I recorded it. Then, I waited for Darren to leave for work. I sat Craig down. "I want you out by Friday." He laughed in my face. "Good luck with that. Darren says I can stay as long as I need." "Yeah, but Darren's not the one on the mortgage." That shut him up. I gave him a printed letter, signed, dated, and legally sound. My cousin wrote it up. It was an official notice to vacate. Since he wasn't a tenant, I didn't have to give him more than a few days. He crumpled the paper and threw it at me. "You can't do this." "I already did." He stormed out of the house that afternoon. Said he was going to talk to Darren. I let him. I wanted them to fight. That night, Darren came home fuming. "What the hell did you do?" "I protected our kids." "You should try it sometime." "You can't kick out my brother." "Oh, I can. Because guess what? This house? The mortgage is in my name. You couldn't qualify when we bought it, remember?" He turned white. I kept going. "You want to take sides? Fine. But know this. You chose a man who tried to bully your children for cash over your own wife and kids. So whatever happens next? You brought it on yourself." I could see it hit him. Not just the legal stuff. The weight of what he'd done. But it was too late for sorry. Still, I wasn't done. Craig didn't leave Friday. Of course he didn't. He was still pretending none of this was real. When I reminded him he had 2 days left, he smirked and said, "What are you gonna do? Call the cops on family?" I didn't answer. I didn't have to. That weekend, I left with the kids. Packed up their things while Craig was out. He'd started disappearing more, probably avoiding the tension. Darren tried to stop me. "Don't drag them into this," he said. "You already did," I told him. "I'm getting them out before he poisons them more." We stayed at my sister's place a few towns over. Small house, cramped, but safe. Rachel cried the first night. Jake was quiet, distant. They both felt betrayed. Not just by Craig, but by their dad. That's what cut the deepest. While we were gone, I did something Darren didn't expect. I froze the joint account. Darren never handled money well. When we first got married, we agreed I'd manage the bills. Over time, I kept it up because he couldn't be bothered. So when I moved out, I drained the household account into a new one under my name. Legally mine. The paycheck Darren deposited bi-weekly? It went straight to bills and groceries. My name was on every utility, every subscription, every expense. Suddenly, Darren had no way to pay for food, gas, or even Netflix. Craig started to notice. He called me, fuming. "What the hell is this? Why is there no food in the fridge?" asked Darren. He screamed at me. Called me a selfish, bitter bitch. I hung up. Then I texted him, "You have 24 hours. After that, the cops get involved. And you can explain to them why you were charging minors rent in a house that legally isn't yours." The next day, I filed a formal complaint. With Tracy's help, I reported Craig for unlicensed tenancy and coercion of minors. Ohio takes that seriously, especially when minors are involved. It wasn't a criminal case yet, but the paper trail was building. Darren tried to call. I ignored him. Then something happened I didn't expect. Craig vanished. Just disappeared. No warning, no note, no bags. Darren called me 3 days later in a panic. "He's gone. He took stuff. My laptop, my watch, my sound system. Even the router." I couldn't help it. I laughed. Not because it was funny, but because it was pathetic. "You let him destroy your family," I said. "And now he's stealing from you, too." "I didn't know what to do," Darren said. "I just wanted to help him." "You didn't think about your kids. You didn't think about me." He was quiet. And for the first time in weeks, he sounded small. Alone. I didn't respond. Not yet. 2 weeks later, I went back to the house. Not to move in, just to see the damage. The place was trashed. The living room carpet was stained with something sticky. Craig had used the guest room walls like a notebook. There were pen marks, scratches, even a giant hole behind the door. My favorite coffee table was missing. A few family photos too. Darren stood there like a man who had just woken up in the middle of a fire. He looked older. Tired. And for once, ashamed. "I was wrong," he said. "About everything." I nodded. "Yeah, you were. I should have protected them. I should have stopped him." I didn't say anything. What was left to say? The damage was done. I gave him the divorce papers that day. Already drawn up. Tracy made sure it was clean and fast. I didn't want the house anymore, I wanted out. But I made one thing very clear: I'm not doing this for revenge. I'm doing this because I can't trust you anymore. Darren signed without a fight. I let him keep the house. It was never about the walls or the roof. It was about the people inside, and mine were already gone. I took full custody of Rachel and Jake. Darren didn't argue. A month later, Craig was found in Kentucky, sleeping in someone's garage. The cops called Darren, who told them not to call again. That was the last time any of us ever heard about Craig. Rachel stopped having nightmares. Jake started talking again. We moved into a smaller house with a big yard and no ghosts. I got a second job to keep us afloat. It was hard. But we were free. Sometimes people ask if I regret anything. If I wish I'd handled it differently. I do. I regret not kicking Craig out the first week. I regret trusting a man who couldn't even defend his own kids. And I regret staying quiet for so long, thinking things would just work themselves out. But in the end, I showed them who I really was. Not the housewife they thought they could walk over. Not the quiet mom who would keep the peace no matter what. I was the woman who chose her children over everything else. And I would do it again. Every single time.